Welcome to the Stranger Conversations podcast, where we explore the lives and lessons of those around us, hidden in plain sight. I'm your host, Tay Jones. Hello, and welcome to today's episode of the podcast. We're talking to Amanda Wheeler. Amanda contacted the show to talk about and promote her life's passion of saving dogs around the world. She's the Adoptions, Public Relations, and Social Media Director for an organization called Street Dog Hero. I had a great time listening to and learning from Amanda, and I think you'll enjoy this episode of the show. Here are just a few things Amanda shared with us during our conversation.
I was in good old corporate America before. I worked for Morgan Stanley for many, many years in San Diego. I felt like I was at a dead end, kind of, with my career. There was really not much more I felt for me to do there. I actively had moments where I felt like, is this all my life is going to be? I was really not fulfilled by that in any way, shape, or form. So I decided to quit my job and pack up all my stuff. I had saved up some money and I was just gonna roll the dice and see what happened. I've always loved dogs. I've always connected with animals the most. I work for an organization called Street Dog Hero. Our mission is rescuing dogs around the world, most specifically street dogs. We partner with local rescuers. I'm really grateful for my business skill set that I have. I mean, we're a growing organization, and so it's very helpful that I'm able to, while wearing my I'm passionate about dogs hat, also be able to wear my corporate savvy finance hat as well. In Mexico, there are animal abuse laws and things like that, but getting them imposed is very, very difficult. We were starting caravans basically from Cabo. We'd have people drive a load of like 15, 20 dogs up to the border. There was a hoarding situation in La Paz that we were involved with recently, where there's a local he was a known drug dealer. He would take dogs in and then use them on social media as ways to try and get donations. I mean, when we first got involved, we had lots of people telling us, like, don't get involved with this guy. There was another rescuer who had gotten involved with him, and he tried to burn her house down. We were able to go in with the local police, like in tandem with the police, and seize his dogs. But the problem after that is, like, it's just going to happen again. And in Korea, they have the meat markets there. These dogs are just born and bred in rusty, disgusting wire cages, just sitting there waiting to be eaten. A couple years ago, we were able to raise enough money to buy one meat farm there, and it had about 15 to 20 dogs in it. It's pretty amazing to see a dog who has been hit over the head with a shovel or starved to within a few breaths of life, and then they still love humans. They still want to be loved, and they will accept whoever wants to give that to them. We have a lot of situations where dogs are tied to trees with no shade or shelter or water or food. We have come across dogs that are so poorly groomed that they're completely matted and they can't even walk. The dog grows and they never tend to the dog ever again. The chain or the collar grows into their neck. Hopefully someday we don't have a homeless dog. Every dog that goes to a home, that's a success. I think we're up to almost 1,300 right now. It's very hard to make decent living and animal welfare. I mean, now I, of course, make less than half of what I used to, but I don't feel broke or poor at all. And I wouldn't change it for the world. I hope people are really evaluating what matters to them in life. Maybe I can inspire someone to quit their corporate job and just take a risk.
Now let's get on with the conversation.
Oh.
Hi, is this Amanda?
Yes.
Hey, this is Tay from the Stranger Conversations podcast.
Hi. Sorry I missed your call.
Hey, no problem. Hey, so we are live and recording on your episode of the show. So I want to thank you for signing up for the podcast, and I'm looking forward to learning a little bit about you and hearing the story that you'd be willing to tell.
Yeah. So did Sarah tell you anything about me or what I do, or?
No, she didn't. And for any listeners, because this whole thing is going to be, on the podcast, Sarah's my sister, and I believe you guys are friends, but she asked me if I wanted to know anything about you, and I said no, because that, makes a little bit more of an interesting show. The only thing I do know is that there was a business associated with the email address that you signed up with, and so I don't know if that's something you're wanting to talk about or something completely different.
Yeah. So, should I take it off speaker or?
It sounds good on my side.
Okay. It's just a little echoey in here, so I just wanted to make sure.
Yeah. So, if you want to start out, just, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah. So, I mean, probably the most notable thing about me is that I work for an organization called Street Dog Hero.
Okay.
And our mission is rescuing dogs around the world, most specifically street dogs from around the world, mostly from Mexico, but also from South Korean meat markets, from China, from Albania.
Wow.
Just kind of all over. So the organization is 3 years old, and I've been with it for 2 years now. And I travel to Mexico a lot to meet and rescue dogs and bring them back. Yeah. And then we work to find their forever homes here in the Pacific Northwest.
Wow, interesting. So what is your title with Street Dog Hero?
Well, it's a couple things. It's adoption, social media, and public relations director.
Okay.
But I do a lot of other things too.
Yeah. Well, that's interesting. So all over the world, I've heard of people adopting dogs, and actually a friend of ours adopted a dog, I think from Puerto Rico. And I was thinking, oh, that's kind of like random, but apparently it's not that random.
Yeah, it does seem kind of random, but then once you get immersed in the world, it becomes very common and normal, I guess. And it's kind of, I think that quote unquote rescuing a dog has become very, it's definitely gained popularity in the last 5+ years, and then even more so in the last couple of years, where it becomes even more, what's the word I'm looking for? More
mainstream,
Well, yeah, but to have, going and getting a dog from the Humane Society isn't as exciting anymore as saying that you rescued a dog from a hoarding situation in Mexico or something like that.
Yeah, there's a little bit of a story behind it.
Yeah, exactly. So, it's a lot more, and our bios and things like that online are a lot more about storytelling and things like that than this is a 4-year-old yellow lab or something.
Right. And when you say that you go down to Mexico and you're rescuing these dogs, I'm assuming you don't just go down there and find strays and bring them back. There's probably something set up that like partnership down there where they find the animals and then you go down and rescue them from them.
Yeah. So a lot of people do think that we just fly down there and walk the streets and
kidnap some dogs. Yeah.
Which when we're down there, we do meet dogs that we then put into rescue, but we partner with local rescuers essentially. And they're the ones who are really on the front lines, and they're the ones who are having dogs dropped off on their doorstep in the middle of the night, or they're the ones getting calls that there's a box full of puppies on the side of the road, or maybe there's an injured dog, or a dog that's tied. We have a lot of situations where dogs are tied to trees with no shade or shelter or water or food. Wow. And so they're the ones intervening in those situations. And then they're the ones giving immediate medical care to those dogs. And then from there, they make their way to us.
Gotcha. Wow.
So it's kind of a variety. There's some rescuers that are just, a one man show, so to speak. And then there are other kind of more established, more business, like more shelter run rescue that we work with.
And if you find an animal in another country, do you usually have someone that's ready to adopt that animal before you bring them back, or do you bring them back and then work on the adoption portion later?
So we do both. Our organization is solely foster based, so we don't have a shelter or a facility. So before any dog can come up, we have to have a foster in place for it.
Okay.
And then we also, of course, because every dog flies to us. We try not to drive. During COVID. We had to drive, but it's very difficult to do that. So we have, our reservations of incoming dogs. And so then once we get them a foster, then the next step is to put them on the website and try and get them adopted before they arrive. And we usually get about, I'd say 80% are adopted before they land.
Wow. And then you said the company is only 3 years old, and you've been with them that whole time?
No, I've been with them for 2 years.
Okay. And were you in a similar field before, or were you doing something completely different with your life?
No, I was in good old corporate America before.
Ah.
I worked for Morgan Stanley for many, many years in San Diego.
Wow.
And then I was really not fulfilled by that in any way, shape, or form. So I decided to quit my job and pack up all my stuff. And I was born and raised in Bend, so I moved back to Bend. And then I had recently gotten involved. So when I was living in San Diego, I had a dog that was diagnosed with bone cancer.
Okay.
And through that, I ended up finding through his doctors and whatnot, I ended up hearing about this organization called Best Friends. And they're the nation's largest rescue, actually.
Okay.
And they have a sanctuary in Kanab, Utah, where you can go and volunteer and work with. They have all sorts of animals: horses, pigs, parrots, dogs, cats.
Wow.
They take a lot of really hard to place animals, like they took all of Michael Vick's dogs, actually.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So after my dog passed away, I ended up going there and volunteering for a week, and sparked my. I was kind of like, oh, I think I really like animal welfare.
Yeah.
So then I started volunteering at the Humane Society there, but then shortly after that, I ended up moving back to Bend. So I knew that I wanted to become involved with the shelter here, but kind of more on a higher level, or where I thought that I could contribute more, which at that time was more in the financial sector, with my Morgan Stanley background. So I ended up applying to be on the board of directors at the shelter here and getting a position there. So I did that for a few years, and through that, I ended up meeting a gal who was involved with Street Dog Hero, because her passion, she had traveled to, I think it was Aruba, and had seen the dogs there and had helped there, and so she was involved with Street Dog Hero. So that's and then they were looking to expand and needed more help, and that kind of ended up being the bridge to that. And I just started doing their social media and things like that. And then eventually I ended up having that be my sole job.
Yeah. So packing up, probably a very, lucrative job with Morgan Stanley down in California and just packing up and moving back home to Bend. But that was before you actually had another job lined up?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So that was probably scary, huh?
Yeah, it was very. I had decided I was going to get my real estate license and try that. And then, I had saved up some money and I was just going to roll the dice and see what happened.
Yeah, and where do you think, you would get the courage to, just up and completely change your life? Was it more you weren't happy where you were at Morgan Stanley, or just that you wanted to pursue something totally different?
I think it was a combination of the two. I mean, I felt like I was at a dead end kind of with my career. There was really not much more I felt for me to do there. And I also felt like I actively had moments where I felt like, is this all my life is going to be? Like, it just felt very meaningless to me. I didn't feel like I was contributing or doing anything worthwhile, I guess.
Yeah.
And so it was just kind of a combination of wanting to change that. And it was kind of like now or never. Like, you might wake up and be 50, and wish you did it, and you never did.
Yeah, well, I think that's important, to find something, that you're passionate about and actually, take the step, a little leap of faith to go down. It sounds like everything worked out in the end for you.
Yeah, it definitely takes a leap of faith for sure. I mean, I have lots of friends who, are kind of stuck. Like, I feel like my generation, we're still in the, like, you need to work to make money. Working isn't for fulfillment or, your passion in life. Like, that's your obligation to support your life or your lifestyle. So I feel like I have a lot of friends who are stuck in jobs that they don't like or they find unfulfilling, but it's really hard to transition that out of that. And it's really hard to find a job. I mean, depending upon what it is, of course, it's very hard to make a decent living in animal welfare for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. I think as you grow older, and you get more life experiences and do different things, you kind of work yourself up and you kind of really realize what's important in your life and take those next steps, those leaps of faith to kind of get yourself into what you're passionate about.
Oh, 100%. I mean, I guess what I was trying to say was I have friends who are afraid to give up the money.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, well, I have to make this much. And, and I used to think that way too. I used to be like, there's no way I could take a pay cut. Like, I use every dime as it is. Like, there's just no way I can do that. But it's funny how, I mean, now I, of course, make less than half of what I used to, but I don't feel broke or poor at all.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't change it for the world. Like, I feel so much better about my life and where I'm at, and the money has I mean, of course you have to make enough to put a roof over your head, but
yeah, it's kind of that the fulfillment is the payoff there.
Yeah, exactly. I wouldn't, if someone said, oh, well, you can go back to making double, and I would never trade that. So I wish that people could kind of get out of their, this idea that, like, have to make X amount of money, kind of thing.
Yeah. And so it sounds like you kind of found this passion later in life. This isn't something that you grew up with, as a child, just being an animal lover or volunteering at humane shelters, etc. This was all something later in life for you?
Well, I've always loved dogs. I mean, I've always had a dog growing up. As soon as I went to college, I got a dog. I've always connected with animals the most.
Yeah.
So dogs, but I never associated it with a passion. It was just, I like dogs.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess I was never really exposed to any sort of career or work or path that may exist in animal welfare. So I just didn't really know. I just didn't even know that even existed, I guess, until I really thought that like being a veterinarian was the only way you could, be involved with animals and get paid for it, kind of a thing.
Yeah, yeah, it's hard to kind of realize what the field entails, till you really maybe dive a little deeper into it.
Right, right. I mean, I went to college and there definitely wasn't a like get your degree in dog rescue.
Yeah, yeah. Or yeah, the follow your passion degree, do whatever you want.
Right.
um, yeah, yeah, that's interesting. So is Street Dog Hero then, is that like a nonprofit?
Yes,
It
yes.
is, okay. And so, like you said, I think you said about 80% of them, get you already have a home for them when you bring them back. The other 20%, you said there's no shelter. What happens with those dogs when you bring them back? How long are you usually holding on to these dogs, taking care of them until you find somebody?
Yeah, it depends. So they all go into a foster home. So we have volunteers that sign up to be foster homes, and we post, we say, hey, here's the picture of this dog, here's the bio, who wants to foster it. One of the volunteers raises their hand, and then when the dog lands at the airport, they go and pick them up. And then all dogs are vetted as soon as they come in again. But yeah, it can take sometimes just a couple days up to a couple weeks, or right now we kind of have a special needs little Chihuahua girl. She has seizures and things like that, so she's a harder to place dog. So I think she's been with us probably almost 2 months now. I'd say the longest we've had is 4.5, 5 months probably.
Okay. Wow. So those people that step up to do the fostering for these animals are really, they're really putting themselves out there. They could end up with, an animal for quite some time.
Well, I mean, not really, because if they have to go somewhere, or if they get tired of it, we just move the dog to another foster home.
Gotcha.
So, I mean, ideally, yes, they stay with them until they're adopted, but we want to make it as easy to foster as possible. So we try to, let people know that we can, of course, accommodate if they need to change things.
And then if you're going to foster a dog, is the cost, do they accept the cost of medications and vet bills and things, or is that something that's all taken care of through Street Dog Hero?
No, we cover all of the medical. They do pay for food, and treats or whatever. Or if we have someone that really wants to foster but can't afford the food, then we provide the food. But most everyone provides their own food. And then we cover all the medical expenses, depending upon if there is any or not.
Right. So I would assume, coming from the corporate world, although it wasn't your passion, you weren't fulfilled with that. You probably learned a lot of skills that were able to transfer into this position. What do you think is the most valuable lessons you learned in the corporate world that you've now been able to bring, into your passion life and to be able to help the organization?
Well, gosh, I'm really grateful for my business skill set that I have. I mean, we're a growing organization. And so it's very helpful that I'm able to, while wearing I'm passionate about dogs hat, also be able to wear my, corporate savvy finance hat as well, because we have to grow smart and in a way that will allow us to keep going. And then just structurally, grow the right way there too. So I think, as much as the career at Morgan Stanley wasn't fulfilling, like you said, at the time, I am really grateful that I did have that background. And I actually, in the couple of hires that we've done here, I look for people with corporate backgrounds, because it's great exposure, and it's you kind of like work a different way, I guess. Like in a very organized, you have more exposure to process and procedure and expectation, and having to, I mean, Morgan Stanley is a very intense corporate environment. But, I guess, discipline and like understanding expectations and knowing that if you don't meet those expectations, you're,
Right. Yeah.
So yeah, it's been good to be able to have that skill set for sure.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like you're close enough with the organization that you're having that, that inside hand to be able to help push it forward too, to grow it, which in turn, helps more animals.
Yeah. I mean, I was the third employee and there's only been 3 of us until about a couple months ago.
Oh, wow.
And then but in the last couple months, we've hired 3 more people. So yeah, I mean, for the majority of the 2 years I've been with the organization, it's been just the 3 of us, growing it and managing it. So.
Yeah. And what do you think is the main factor behind, the current explosion that you're seeing now?
Well, I mean, it was a good steady increase there until we hit COVID. And then, I mean, everybody wanted a dog.
Yeah. So that did play a part in it. Huh? Everybody needs a companion stuck at their house.
Yeah. It's impacted our world tremendously. I mean, yeah, we were growing at a pretty decent clip. And then, I mean, yeah, everyone's like, I'm home, I'm bored, I have time to put into a dog. And I mean, we couldn't even keep dogs fast enough.
Wow.
The problem was that the flight stopped, which is our main mode of transportation. So when COVID first started, we actually took dogs from local shelters here because they were having an influx of owner surrender, of dogs coming in. And then the problem was, because with COVID, nobody could come into the shelter. They weren't getting out. So like they had this influx of dogs and no way to move them out and get them adopted.
Right.
So we would take them so that we could still keep those dogs moving. And then we were starting caravans basically from Cabo up.
Wow.
We'd have people drive a load of like 15, 20 dogs up to the border and meet them there and then drive them all the way up to Oregon. So that's how we did things for a couple months. And then, flights started opening up a little bit more, but in June, we were able to start flying again. Yeah, because that was my first trip back to Guadalajara. And then I basically started going. I went twice in June. And then every month after I've gone just to get loads of dogs, basically.
Yeah. When you're talking about bringing, truckloads of dogs around, when you try to cross the border with 20 dogs, do they look at you like, maybe what's going on here? Is this some elaborate smuggling ring of something?
Yeah. Yeah, so we have permits for the dogs. So like each dog has to be approved by the USDA before it can come into the country.
Okay.
Otherwise you're allowed to bring in your personal animals. But if you're bringing a dog in for resale or adoption, then you have to have a permit for it and so all the dogs, regardless of how they come in, permitted or not, they all have to have been seen by a vet within 48 hours, 72 hours of travel and receive all their vaccinations and their certificate of good health before they're allowed into the country.
Wow. And when you're getting animals from another country like Mexico, or I think you said Korea at one point, what is it just other passionate people on the other sides of these borders that are taking it upon themselves to find these animals, or do the governments actually have laws against these things like the United States does?
So it's just a bunch of passionate people. And I mean, there are in Mexico, there are animal abuse laws and things like that, but getting them imposed is very, very difficult.
It's more laws in quotes, kind of like they have laws, but nobody pays attention to them.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I mean, you have to be doing, in the US, like, you can call if the neighbor's dog is barking too much.
Yeah.
Or, if for, that's an infraction here, where there it has to be, I mean, really, really, really bad, and like over and over and over and over again. There's a situation where there was a hoarding situation in La Paz, that we were involved with recently, where there's a local he was a known drug dealer. He would take dogs in and then use them on social media as ways to try and get donations, and try and, collect money and say that they're for food or medicine or whatever. And he'd show these images of these super skinny, the dogs are like dying,
Oh, wow.
and act like he was rescuing them. And it took months and months and months. But we were able to go in with the local police, like in tandem with the police and everything, and seize his dogs. But the problem after that is, like, it's just going to happen again. And even though getting the police involved in that is very challenging, and then they basically give him a notice that says you're not allowed to own another dog. But if he goes and does it, like, nobody really does anything unless we cruise down there again and like, hey, this guy has 20 more dogs again. Like, I thought we wrote a fine and he can't do that. And like, okay, like, let's go take care of it now.
Yeah.
So it's very difficult to actually, usually what happens is that, excuse me, it's a neighbor, or we have lots of situations where the owners are going to take the dog to be euthanized because they don't want it anymore. And like, the maid will take it, or the neighbor will take it and bring it to a rescue, and kind of intervene that way.
Yeah, very interesting. Yeah, you're saving the world one dog at a time here.
Yeah. And in Korea, they have the meat markets there. So these dogs are just born and bred in rusty, disgusting wire cages, just sitting there waiting to be eaten, basically. And a couple years ago, we were able to raise enough money to buy one meat farm there, and it had about 15 to 20 dogs in it.
Wow.
And we've been working on slowly. I mean, we don't have a lot of flight angels cruising back and forth from South Korea, so it takes longer. But we've been slowly bringing them over, one flight at a time, basically.
Yeah. And when you're working with some of these people in the other countries, this is some work, the way you're explaining it, some people do this work with, human trafficking. They work with governments of other nations and come up with a resolution for children and save children. It's kind of what you're doing with the dogs. And I know with the human trafficking side of it, some of that can be, extremely dangerous work. You're affecting people's livelihoods in a very poor country. Have you ever had any close calls or interesting times when you started to get involved and try to save an animal?
Definitely with this last hoarding situation, the drug dealer guy was a known. When we first got involved, we had lots of people telling us, like, don't get involved with this guy. There was another rescuer who had gotten involved with him, and he tried to burn her house down.
Wow.
And so it got really sketchy with him. But that's why we made sure the police were involved and things like that. But generally, that was a totally unique situation. Generally, no, we really haven't had much issues. I think it's more when we, in Mexico, the locals are afraid that the gringos are going to come down and steal their dogs from them.
Yeah.
So there's more of a concern there. And so we do kind of battle a stereotype, we're of course not there to steal anybody's dog. And we've had situations where we have come across dogs that are so poorly groomed that they're completely matted and they can't even walk. And we've asked to take the dog to get groomed, and they're very nervous it took us 3 days one time to earn this person's trust that we were actually going to go get the dog groomed and then return the dog back to them. So
wow.
It's really important that And a lot of times Americans go down there and they see these bad situations and they want to buy the dog from people. And it's important that Americans not do that, and that we, kind of earn trust and respect, because, we want, it's much better to take that dog and get it groomed and return it than to just not be able to do anything at all.
Right.
But yeah, and then we come across this more because we also do spay and neuter clinics in Mexico. So, like 25 Americans show up and we do take dogs off the street for that. And we just bring them, do surgery on them, and then set them back out on the street, basically. But then we also, provide low cost or free spay neuter for the residents of whatever town we're working in too.
Yeah. And do you find some of the mistreatment or, of the animals, like obviously the drug dealer guy, he was doing it for money, but some of the other, instances that you're seeing in some of these countries, is it cultural, or is it an economic issue where they just don't have the ability to care for them?
It's definitely, it's a combination. I would say it's 90% cultural. We certainly come across people who really love and want to help their animals, but just don't have the money to do it. Or in combination with that, they don't understand. Like a lot of times in Mexico, they don't even know what spay or neuter is.
Yeah.
That's just like not something that's on their radar at all. So you kind of have to explain to them, like, oh, this is why you want to have it done. And it's not only for limiting reproduction, but it's also reducing, cancers, ovarian cancer, testicular cancer, all, aggression, behavioral issues, all sorts of things. So it's, and then they're like, oh, okay. Like, then they want to do it. But
yeah,
a lot of times it's just, we see a lot of, two things. So a lot of times when we travel, we always bring new collars with us, because a lot of times they give puppies as presents, for birthday presents to little kids.
Okay.
A little kid can't take care of a puppy, obviously.
Right.
And then the parent doesn't necessarily want it or want to deal with it. So they stick it on a chain, on a stump, like to a tree stump or to a pole or whatever, as a puppy. Well, the puppy grows, and the chain or whatever is on there. It could be even a cable. We saw a dog come in. We were in Mexico last week doing a neuter clinic, and someone had used an old seatbelt out of a car, and that was the dog's collar and chain, essentially.
Yeah.
And the dog grows, and they never tend to the dog ever again. They maybe throw it some food, maybe some water, but they don't ever go and interact with it or think about its well-being, I guess. So the dog grows, and the chain or the collar grows into their neck.
Yeah.
And so that happens a lot. So that is like a cultural thing, right? Like that's not even in their mind that this animal has its own feelings or sensory or desire to be fed or nourished or loved or anything like that.
Yeah, well, that's got to be heartbreaking, but also rewarding at the same time when you're able to save, an animal in that situation.
Yeah, it's definitely both, for sure.
Yeah. What do you love most about dogs?
Probably their unconditional ability to love. It's pretty amazing to see a dog who has been hit over the head with a shovel or starved to within a few breaths of life, and then they still love humans. They still want to be loved, and they will, accept whoever wants to give that to them.
Yeah. Yeah, that is very interesting. They just want to feel accepted. And, I think people are that way as well. Some people that have been abused are, kind of the same mentality. They still have that drive to, to want to be loved.
Well, I mean, I think anybody, I mean, that's human nature, right?
Yeah.
But it's also canine nature.
Yeah.
But I mean, I guess, of course, they want to be loved, but I guess it's their ability to still love a human after what a human has done to them. I mean, humans have done horrible, horrible, horrible things to animals.
Mm-hmm.
And it's pretty amazing that they still want to come back and lick someone in the face, I guess.
Yeah, right. They're not just out there to just go bite every human because they've had a bad experience.
Right, exactly. Yeah. Very forgiving.
Yeah. So when you moved from California, back to Bend to start this new adventure in your life, did you do that by yourself? Or are you married? Do you have kids?
No, just me and the dog.
Yeah. Yeah.
At the time, one dog.
At the time, what? I'm sorry?
At the time, one dog.
Yeah. And how many do you have now?
I have 3, and then I generally foster. So
yeah.
I'd say 3 and a rotating 4th.
Yeah, we have 3 dogs. We have 3 kids and 3 dogs, so we always joking.
Oh, you have a household.
Yeah, yeah, we definitely have a household. But 2 of them are really, really small, so that works out.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what's the future of Street Dog Hero? Where do you see that business scaling in the future there?
Gosh, I mean, I feel like it's kind of limitless. I mean, right now we're doing 1 spay and neuter clinic a year in Mexico. The goal is to ultimately be doing them every quarter there. With COVID, we started doing local clinics here. So we've done 2 in La Pine, and we're getting ready to do 1 in Christmas Valley in a couple weeks. I mean, we've tripled the amount of dogs this year that we got adopted that we did the year before. So I think, we just, our operation is getting bigger and broader. We have adopters. We had someone from New York adopt a dog. We have quite a few people from California adopting. We had 1 in Montana and South Dakota, so kind of all over. But yeah, I mean, pie in the sky. I would love for it to be kind of like a Best Friends.
Yeah. Yeah, it sounds like you're really expanding out. You're kind of hitting both coasts at least right now, and some in between.
Yeah, and trying to do, not only are we doing adoptions and that sort of thing, but also really trying to make a difference in the overall. It's great that we're getting dogs adopted, but there's an endless supply. So at some point you have to work on the problem of endless supply. So it's really great to be able to start to work more in the spay neuter section where we can actually reduce the population. I mean, that's the goal, right? Hopefully someday we don't have a homeless dog.
Yeah.
We all know that'll never happen. But so I think that's what makes our organization completely different than any other rescue, basically, is they're not working to combat the root of the problem.
Right.
Not saying that, I mean, rescues are amazing, and I'm not saying that they aren't doing what they should be, but it's just, that's something that I really appreciate about our organization, I guess.
Yeah. And for Street Dog Hero, what do you think is, how do you quantify success in a business like this?
Well, I mean, the very first dog that got a home is a success to me.
Yeah.
Whether it's 1 dog or I think we're up to almost 1,300 right now.
Wow.
To me, every dog that goes to a home, that's a success.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. And do you think you'd be doing this, at least working in the same field, if money was no factor, you could do anything in your life? Is this what you would be doing?
Oh, absolutely. Yep. I wouldn't change it. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, I can definitely.
If I won lottery tomorrow, I'd be doing the same thing.
Well, that's good. I guess that's how you know whether or not you found, your thing in life, right?
Yeah,
if you'd still
absolutely.
do it no matter about the money, which it sounds like, you were willing to give up the money to come give it a shot. And I'm glad that it's something that, is working out for you.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so if someone was going to find out more about Street Dog Hero or to help you guys out, is there donations? How does somebody become a foster parent? Like, where do they find that information?
Yeah, so everything's on our website, www.streetdoghero.org. And we have a foster tab on there that talks all about fostering, and there's a link there to our foster home application. We also have all of our available dogs up for adoption there as well. And then, of course, you can access the application there. But yeah, I mean, we survive 100% on donations. So,
Yeah.
What's really helpful is people following us on Facebook and Instagram and sharing our posts and helping us spread the word kind of. And, and yeah, I mean, we can't do what we do without donations. So
Right.
absolutely. And it's everything from money to time. We have people that are just drivers. They drive dogs from Portland to Bend, or we have foster. There's all sorts of different things people can do to help. And it all matters and makes a difference.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, hopefully this podcast can help you guys out a little bit. We'll definitely link, all the website and everything that you're mentioning here, on our stuff, and hopefully,
Oh, perfect.
yeah, hopefully people could listen to this and get to hear that passion that you have for what you're doing and for the dogs and everything that you're saving around the world.
Yeah, maybe I can inspire someone to quit their corporate job and just take a risk.
Yeah, absolutely. In today's world, I think everybody's working from home, and I think now's the time that if people are looking to follow their passion, this might be the time. I think people have decided whether or not they want to be where they're at the current moment.
Totally. I mean, you can see it I don't know where you're at, but in Bend, I mean, it's crazy. I mean, the housing market is crazy here. And I think, yeah, a lot of it, people are reevaluating. I mean, I hope people are really evaluating what matters to them in life. And yeah, it's like, well, we're going to be home. We better make sure it's good, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we live in Washington State, and a lot of tech jobs over here, and what we've noticed is I think people are following that because a lot of the tech companies have all of a sudden said, hey, you don't have to come to the office pretty much ever again. You can work from wherever. And
Right.
a lot of people are, deciding whether or not this is where they want to live or not and packing up. We've seen a lot of houses go on the market, but we've seen a lot of houses sell in the same day. So clearly there's people that want to stick around, but I think it's great that people are being able to find, where they want to be in life. And I definitely agree with you. Being stuck in the house more with the COVID, I can for sure see why people are wanting to kind of have more of that companion, something that they can take care of because they definitely have more time on their hands.
Yeah, I mean, I think that was one of the big barriers is that people felt like, oh, they don't have time to give to training or adjusting and all of that. And now it's like, nope, you got plenty of time. I mean, not, of course, we're all still busy, but it's a lot easier to train a dog when you're at home with it for 8 hours.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's changed, I think everyone's lives, sometimes in some aspects it's for the better, and then some things are definitely, not good with kids not being in school.
Of course. Yeah.
That's been tough. My wife actually works from home, and I'm always like, man, I don't know how you do that. The kids are here, they're doing school in the house. I don't think I'd mind working from home if if school wasn't happening in the home as well. I think that's really tough.
Yeah, I'm definitely very grateful that all my kids have 4 legs and only bark.
Absolutely.
And I'm not responsible for teaching them, their education educating them for the next year or two.
That's right. Yeah, teaching a dog to sit is a lot easier than algebra, I can guarantee you.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but I have spruced up on some of my math skills trying to teach my kids.
Oh, I bet my friends with kids are like, oh my God, I like know way more than I ever did before. It's like a brush up and it's just so different now than it was 20 years ago too. And
Yeah.
At first they're like, I don't know how to do any of this. Like,
Yeah. Yeah, I'm watching Zoom calls trying to figure it out myself.
right.
Yeah, and before we get off the phone here, I was just curious too. I wanted to ask you, what's the best advice that you've ever received in your life?
Oh gosh. Um, well, I just was telling someone this the other day. I don't think it's the best advice I've ever gotten, but it was memorable at least. But
Yeah.
it was if you ask for advice, you'll get a job, and if you ask for a job, you'll get advice.
Oh, nice. Okay, I like that.
It's been true in my life.
Yeah.
But so yeah, that's just kind of what comes to mind. Probably not the best advice I've ever. I mean, it's good, but not.
Yeah, some of those things that are memorable, when you sometimes the advice you get, it sticks out because it was a time in your life that was something that you wanted to hear or needed to hear at that point in time.
Yeah.
So yeah, there might have been something going on in your life there at that time that, made that stick out for you.
Yeah, and it's definitely been true for sure. And I've used it.
Yeah.
I've used it myself, but yeah.
Yeah. Great. Well, Amanda, it's been great talking to you. We've been talking for almost 45 minutes, so I will let you go. But I really appreciate you signing up for the show and talking all about Street Dog Hero and, sharing your passion, and, appreciate you calling in and not being a stranger.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm happy to do it.
All right, great. Well, thank you so much, and it was great talking to you.
Okay, you too. Have a good night.
You too. Bye.
Bye.
And there you have it, Amanda Wheeler with Street Dog Hero. I'd like to thank Amanda for contacting the show and sharing her life with us all. If you'd like to get involved with Street Dog Hero or make a donation, I've linked their information in the show notes. You can also follow and share their journey on Facebook and Instagram. You can find additional episodes of this show on YouTube and wherever you find your podcasts. Please like, follow, share, and subscribe to the show and our social media so we can continue to share the lives and lessons of those around us, hidden in plain sight. And do us a favor, rate this show and leave a review, which helps us grow our audience. Thanks for listening, and stay tuned for the conversation.